Morning. Today I'm replacing my 2008 Toyota RAV4 brake pads and
I have a
rotors.
2008 Toyota RAV4 all-wheel drive Sport Edition 4-cylinder engine without a third row seat. So the reason why I'm changing the rotor is because when I'm driving the car and I put on brakes, the steering wheel start to shimmy. And so before we start, obviously safety first, we have the wood blocks on the back of the car. And then I loosened up the lug nuts and I'm gonna jack it up, gonna pull the tire out, and we'll go from there. So before we start, I have all my parts here and tools. I have my brake pads. I bought it from AutoZone. I got the Duralast. I stuck with that because that's what I used in my last pad change, and it's worked well for me. And I just got these rotors from Toyota. Believe it or not, I got it online and the price was much cheaper than the aftermarket part. So I got my wrenches, my brake cleaners, my torque wrench, my lube, my bolt in case the rotors get stuck, and my clamp to push the piston back in. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the caliper. So we're gonna use our 14mm wrench. We're gonna loosen up this screw up here and this screw down here. If you look at where the caliper is, so we can loosen up this caliper. I'm gonna loosen this up. So I'm gonna loosen up these two 14mm bolts to remove the caliper, and make sure you support the caliper when you pull it out, because if you can see, it's held on together by the brake hose here. You don't want to strain the brake hose. You don't want to put any strain to damage this brake hose. So what I usually do is I use an S hook like this to hook it up and let it sit here so as not to strain the brake line. Now we're going to have to remove the two bolts that hold the caliper bracket together. So this one down here, and then this one up here. So we're gonna need like a 17mm wrench. Okay, because I do not have a pry bar, I found this little tube pipe that I have. I'm using this as a leverage to help me loosen up this bolt. As you can see, it makes life easier to loosen up the bolt. Now that I have the bolt loosened up, we're just gonna take the rest of the bolt out by hand and pull the bolt from the bottom first. Make sure you support the caliper bracket with the other hand so it doesn't fall on you. And once this comes off, and you can just pull the caliper out with the brake pads still in there. Just make a mental note of where the caliper, the brake pads, and these little clips go. So when you put the new ones in, you kind of like know where to put it in. But I'll go through it when I put the new ones in. So here are the brake pads. As you can see, they still have a lot of life in them, but it's just that the rotors are most likely warped. So anytime you change the rotors, it is recommended that you change the brake pads as well. So my rotor is stuck, so I needed some help. There's muscles! I actually had to use the 8mm 1 1/4 bolt, push it in to help push it out. And I used my rubber mallet to kind of like hit it to loosen it up a little bit, and then muscles help me out. So with these bolts, I had to turn it clockwise to kind of like help push it out from the inside. As you can see where it left that little mark there, where it pushed the rotor that was stuck to the hub. So I'm gonna clean up this hub a little bit, and I got this brake installation kit. It comes with like the grease and like a little abrasive pad. So I'm just gonna clean out this area here to kind of like keep it from take the rust off, to keep the rotors from getting stuck too much. So I cleaned it up a little bit, made sure I got cleaned up the top parts too, where the rotors kind of like sits in, and then I kind of like squirted it off with like the brake cleaner here. Now we're ready to put our rotor in. Here goes our new rotor. Now we're gonna clean out the caliper bracket and then put it in next. So to take the old pads off, you have to sort of like pry it up this way and slide it off. It kind of like goes in like this, and it sits like right there. So you have to kind of like push it down at an angle, and then it comes off like this. And I usually like to do one at a time, so this way when you replace these like clips, you can kind of like orient yourself. If you look at here, see, and I get the clip that oriented to the same clip. So I'm gonna just pry these out right now, pry these two sides out, replace them with these clips right here. But before I do that, I have to clean the sides where the clips sit on as well. So I'm just cleaning the place where the clips contact onto the caliper bracket, just to take any of the rust off, just with a simple wire brush. Spray it down. And then we're gonna put the clips back on. It just kind of clips on with these two little clips right here on the side. Just push it in like that, and it sits into place just like so. So the other side, just the same thing. Go from the bottom, go from this bottom part first, let it sit on the bottom of this bracket, then kind of like pull it up and then just push it in. And there you go. Now your new brake pads will sit in there. You'll have to go in at an angle again like this to push it in. So you can see you can push this clip down here as you're pushing it in this way. Kind of like push it in this way and then turn it. But we'll do that later. I'd like to put the bracket on first before putting the brake pads on, so that it doesn't fall out, or it's easier to kind of like slide in. So I'm gonna just take the other part, the pad out, clean out where the clips sit in, and put the new clips on the other side, and I'll take you back. Another thing you need to do before you put the bracket back on are these pins, these caliper pins. I'd like to take them out, clean them, and grease them. So you can see that one I just loosened up, but this one here, it's kind of hard. There. Now you can see it's moving a little bit better. So whoever changed these brakes before probably never took this out and cleaned them. So I'm just gonna pull these out, clean them and grease them. So when you take these pins out, you have to be careful that you don't damage the boot, this rubber boot here. So a lot of times people pull it out and twist it off, and they might put a tear on the plastic boot. So what I like to do is I like to put one finger, hold on to the boot here, twist this around to loosen it up. Make sure the boot doesn't twist with you, because sometimes when it gets stuck, like when I first did this was stuck. So I had to kind of like hold the boot down so the boot doesn't twist. And then you can't kind of like just hold the boot down, you pull this out, and then you can see how it's kind of dry. So I'm just gonna, it's fairly clean, so I'm just gonna add some grease to it. But I want to change my gloves because, as you can see, it's dirty. You want to make sure that you put grease on with clean gloves on. Let me loosen this other side. You can see on this side here, there's a little bit of rust there. So I'm just gonna clean that out too, and then put some grease here. Okay, after you clean it up and then you put grease on it, all you have to do is push it back in. Then make sure you push it all the way in so it sits on, so the rubber boot kind of like gets sealed back into the corners there. Clean up the excess grease in case you got some on the pin. And then you just kind of like pull it out and push it in just to kind of like spread the grease a little bit. As you can see, it's moving a lot better. And just make sure that none of the that there's no you also have to check to make sure that none of the there's no rips in the boot, because if it does, then water can go in. So you can see this one here is going up and down easily too. So just turn it around a little bit, spread out the grease. And now we're ready to install it. I forgot to show you this, but before I put the clips in, I actually had put just a little dab of like grease between the caliper bracket and the metal contact. So now I just use my fingers to put in the 17mm bolt on the caliper bracket, hand tighten it, and then we'll torque it to the right specs. So to put the brake pads on, you have to put it at this angle, sort of push it in a little bit, and then pull it in, just like that. Okay, it started raining, so I'm inside the garage right now. I'm gonna have to finish the rest of the brakes later. As you can see, raining down here in South Florida. And as I was showing you how to put this on, I took the caliper bracket out again, just to kind of like show you. If you can see on this end here, there's the spring loaded here, right here. So my mistake when I used to do was I used to put it down at an angle this way where the spring is, but it's easier, and you're supposed to put it up on the top here where there's no spring. So you put this on top like this, and as you twist this like this, it kind of like pushes the spring in to kind of like hold it in place. So this kind of like helps it slide better. So to do it on both sides, you go like this, make sure both sides are on the top part, and then just kind of like twist it gently, slowly, and then there you go. It's kind of difficult to do in front of the camera, but basically that's how it goes. So if you can see, there you go. And now you put this in between the rotors. Okay, 5 minutes later, as you can see, the sun is out. Bright and clear again. And I wait for it to stop drizzling a little bit. Then I'll go back to the work. So it may be easier for some of you to put the brake pads on the caliper bracket first before installing the caliper bracket. So you don't have to finagle with the pads from behind. So now I'm just putting the bolts in, and I'll take you back. So the caliper bracket torque spec is 72 foot-pounds. So there we go, 72 foot-pounds. And I already did this bottom part. Just gonna double check it. There you go. And then triple check the top. There you go. So 72 foot-pounds for the caliper bracket torque for the bolts. Now to push the piston back in, I have a C-clamp right here. And I just like to use the, I position it like so. And I take one of the old brake pads and I put it here. And that's what I use to push the piston back in. But there are tools out there for you to push this piston back in flat. I just happen to have a C-clamp, and that's what I use. As you can see, I'm using the C-clamp to push the piston back in. You can see how the piston is going in. It's getting flatter. And push it all the way in flat. And just be careful, keep an eye on your hose. Okay, I think that is flat. Pretty good. You can see the piston is now flat, it's flush. And just to check to make sure there are no leaks around the area. And what I'd like to do also is, before I push the piston in, I actually open up the hood and I open up the brake cap just to kind of like let some of the fluid rise up and down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to put the caliper back on. This slides through, this slides in between the brake pads, and it just goes in just like so. And then you align the top hole with the caliper pin, and you just insert the bolt in there to hold it into place. And then you do the one on the bottom as well. Okay, now I'm gonna go get my torque wrench, and I believe you torque this to 25 foot-pounds. Okay, so I double checked the torque specs for these caliper bolts, and there are 25 foot-pounds. So I have them set at 25 foot-pounds. There you go. And the bottom one. Okay, so while I was tightening the bottom caliper bolt down, this caliper pin kept on rotating, so I couldn't get my 25 foot-pounds of torque. So I had to go get a channel lock, kind of like grab it from the bottom, stabilize it, and then tighten it. There you go, 25 foot-pounds. Sometimes that's happened. So sometimes this caliper pin turns when you're trying to tighten the caliper bolt. So you just need like a channel lock or like another wrench to hold the bolt in place. I believe it's like a 17mm bolt, but my wrench is too wide for it, so I had to use a channel lock for it. And that's pretty much it. I put the tire back in a star pattern, hand tighten. Now I'm going to lower the jack, and I'm going to torque it to 76 foot-pounds of torque. 76 foot-pounds. The torque specs for the lug nuts for the Toyota RAV4. And I do it in a star pattern. And that's it, folks. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helps you replace your rotor and brake pads for your 2008 Toyota RAV4. Have a great day.